Where does anxiety come from? Why do I feel the way I do? And what can I do to change the way I feel? Well, if you're interested in those questions, stay tuned because I've got a fantastic story for you. When I was in Philadelphia, in private practice, I got this emergency phone call from a young man Monday morning. And he was in a panic. And he says, Dr. Burns, I think I'm cracking up. I think I'm going crazy. I need to be seen by somebody on an urgent emergency basis. And I got your phone number from the phone book. And if you can see me this morning, fine. Otherwise, I'm just going to go to the hospital. And I just happened to have an opening that morning. And I said, if you can get here by 11 o'clock, I've had a canceled session. And you'd be most welcome to come and tell me what's going on. So he sped to my office and showed up at 11 o'clock. And he told me his story. And essentially he said that he had a very successful life, that he went to the Wharton Business School. That's at Penn. It's a very famous business school. And that he was viewed as a prodigy, and that he had gone to work at some big Philadelphia corporation. I can't remember which one, but that he said he got promotions, and he had developed new ways of managing finance in these giant corporations, and that he and his boss, who was a woman, would often fly together around the country giving presentations, like they'd meet with the board of directors of General Motors or something like that, or the Ford Motor Company, and give presentations. But he said that he was happily married. He and his wife had just had a beautiful baby daughter. But he said, my life started falling apart yesterday, Dr. Burns, and I don't know why. And he said, my boss and I were scheduled to fly to Florida today to do a major conference. And I've never had trouble flying, but I developed this paralyzing fear of airplanes and flying. And I had read that exposure, you're supposed to do exposure to get over a phobia. So yesterday I drove to the Philadelphia airport to try to get over my fear of flying. And the odd thing, Dr. Burns, is that the longer I was there, the more frightened I became. And finally, after spending 2 or 3 hours there getting more and more panicky, I called my boss at home and I told her, you can fire me if you want, but there's no way I'm getting on that plane tomorrow. And I said, what did she say? And he said, well, she thinks the world of me. And she said, don't worry about it, Bill. You take care of your health. And I can easily present the conference in Florida on my own. So he said, then that was a relief. But this morning when I was dressing to go to work and I was tying my tie and looking in the mirror, I saw the reflection of the chandelier in the bedroom, in the mirror, and I saw our baby hanging to death from a noose. And the noose was made out of this tie that I'm holding right now in my hand. And he said that freaked me out. He says, I'm having hallucinations or something. So I ran into the kitchen and I grabbed an orange and a knife to try. I thought if I cut this orange, slice it and eat it, I'll distract myself from this intense fear. And as I was slicing the orange, I saw a hand in front of me with a knife in it. And that hand started stabbing my baby, stabbing her over and over and over again. And then I realized it was the knife that it was in my hand, and that was my hand that was stabbing the baby. And Dr. Burns, I just think I'm cracking up. And I read about your therapy. I think it's called thought control therapy. And you've got to help me stop these horrible thoughts that are going through my mind. Well, I immediately sensed that he was having panic attacks and some kind of symptoms of OCD, like horrible fantasies, and afraid he's going to act them out. And so I started working with him with cognitive therapy, and we made some some progress, but he continued to be very, very symptomatic. And I couldn't get his anxiety levels down really low. But I have this thing I've talked about in other videos and in my book, When Panic Attacks, and I have a class on it in our Feeling Great app, but it's called the hidden emotion technique. And the idea behind it is that when you're anxious, there's a 75% probability that there's something that's bugging you, that but you're not aware of it. You've swept it under the rug. There's something you're angry about or upset about or something you want that you think you're not allowed to want. And because you're so nice, you're not allowed to have these feelings, or so you think. I call that emotophobia or conflict phobia. And so you sweep it under the rug, and you can't even remember why you're so upset. And then it comes out indirectly as symptoms of anxiety. In your case, the fear of flying was one thing, and then these obsessions that somehow you're going to lose control and murder your daughter in some grotesque manner. And so I asked him, is there something that's bothering you, Bill, or we can call him Bill, I guess. That wasn't his real name, but is there something bothering you, Bill? And I asked him that at the beginning and end of every session. Have you thought of something that's bothering you? And when I asked him that, he would get angry with me and say, Dr. Burns, I've told you there's nothing bothering me except for these symptoms. And stop bugging me and asking me that at the start and end of every session. I'm not looking for psychoanalysis. I'm looking for thought control therapy. And so I would work with him on my so-called thought control therapy, and he would get a little bit better, but not an awful lot. And finally, he was still suffering a lot. And finally, after about 6 sessions, he came in the beginning of the session. This is what I do because the patient has probably problems bringing it to conscious awareness. They can't tell you what's bothering them. Often there is something, but they don't realize that. And they're not, being dishonest. They just can't see it. And I said, have you figured out, Bill, if there's something bothering you that you haven't told me about? And he says, Dr. Burns, I've told you this time and time again, that stop asking me that stupid question. And if you ever ask me that question one more time, I'll drop out of therapy. But if you promise never to ask me that question again, I'll tell you this one little thing that isn't important. And I said, yeah, what's the one little thing that isn't important, Bill? And he said, well, to explain it to you, my parents escaped from Nazi Germany, and they came to America, and were not wealthy, but my parents survived, and we have a home and food. And then one of our neighbors, Mr. Fitzsimmons, had also escaped from Nazi Germany, and he started a little furniture store down the street from us. And when I was in grammar school, he paid me $2 an hour to sweep the floors and clean up the warehouse part of his store and that type of thing. And I would run at high speed from school to his furniture store and sweep and clean. And that was the most fun thing in the world. I had that $2 an hour, and I felt like the richest kid in the neighborhood. And I said, well, why are you telling me about Mr. Fitzsimmons? And he says, well, you see, my dad, he had a shoe repair shop, and he kept a big picture of me next to the cash register. And I was a very good student, and I went to the Wharton Business School, and I graduated first in my class at Wharton Business School. And he was so proud of me that I'm now, an executive in a high-powered corporation. And I've seen him with every customer who comes in. He says, this is my son, Bill. And he no businessman like his dad. No, he's a true professional. He went to Wharton Business School. He was one of the top people ever to attend the Wharton Business School. He's a professional. And I said, well, that's all interesting, but what is this? What is it you want to tell me? Or what is the point of this? And he says, well, what I didn't tell you, Dr. Burns, is that the day that I developed the fear of flying, just before that, Mr. Fitzsimmons called me because, you see, he moved away when I was in college and graduate school, and I lost touch with him. And I asked my dad what happened to him. And my dad told me, oh, he started advertising on cable television, and then he got outlets all over Philadelphia. He became immensely wealthy, and then he moved through the whole northeastern United States, and he's probably the top furniture salesperson. He's incredibly wealthy, probably maybe certainly the top person in New England. And I saw him once. I was crossing the street at Wharton, and I saw this tinted window, big stretch limousine going past, and I saw him in the back seat, and I waved, but I don't think he saw me. And I said, well, what did he call you about? And he said, well, Mr. Simmons said, do you remember us? And I said, do I remember you? I think, Mr. Fitzsimmons, I think about you and your wife every day, and how much I miss working with you. I'm making an awful lot of money, but I'm not especially happy. It's too easy for me. And what I loved was sweeping the floors. And then when I was in high school, you taught me to manage the books. You taught me how to wait on customers. And that's why I did so well at Wharton, because I knew business before I attended the business school. I learned it from you. But those were the happiest days of my life, Mr. Fitzsimmons. And it's so great to talk to you. What are you calling me about? And he said, well, Bill, you see, my wife and I always wanted a son or daughter, but we weren't able we couldn't have a pregnancy. It didn't work. And so you were the closest thing to a son that we ever had. And someone just tried to buy my furniture corporation for $80 million. And I told them, no, the company is my baby, and I can't sell my baby. And in addition, my wife and I don't need $80 million because we already have $80 million in the bank and we don't know what to do with it. So I turned the offer down just really fast. But then my wife and I were talking like, well, when are we going to retire? And what are we going to do with the company? And then your name came up. And so we decided, and, I know your dad is proud of you for not being a businessman, but being a true professional. But if you'd come and work with us, whatever money you're making now, we'll double it. And in addition, we'll give you a 5-year vesting so that if you stick with us, and we'll make you president of the company tomorrow if you want. And after 5 years, you'll own this company, and you'll become worth probably $100 million overnight. How about it, Bill? Would you at least consider it? Talk to your father. And see, I know it might break his heart. And so I said, well, gosh, that sounds fantastic. Why don't you do it? This is amazing opportunity for you, and you deserve it. And he says, oh, no, it would break my father's heart. I couldn't let him down. And it would break my boss's heart, because she says, I'm the greatest thing they've ever had there at DuPont or whatever company it was. And worse than that, I've got a baby now, and this would be like speculative, whereas the job I have right now, it's just an old established company, and I have a kind of a guaranteed situation. And now you can see the meaning behind his symptoms. What did he tell his boss when he called from the airport? You can fire me if I want. There's no way I'm getting on the plane. You see, his fear of flying was his body's way of saying to him, you don't want to get on that airplane tomorrow, but because he's such a nice fellow, he's not allowed to say that. So his symptoms do the talking for him, but you have to listen when you're anxious. And what is the music telling you? And then why was he thinking of, in the fantasy, the fear of stabbing his baby daughter to death? Well, if he murdered his daughter, and he didn't have a real impulse to kill her, he just had the fear that somehow he'd go into a rage and kill her. Because you see, he loved his baby, but now because I have a baby, I can't do what I want to do with my life. And a lot of people, probably more women than men, because women, sometimes you've got to do everything for the baby. You get trapped by the demands of being a wife and a mother and all these things simultaneously. But that's what he was feeling, like his obligations to his family. That was what was triggering his symptoms. His body was telling him, trying to shout out loud to him, pay attention. This is something that's very important to you, Bill. This is something that you really want to do. And so I gave him a homework assignment. I said, thanks for telling me that. And your assignment is talk things over with your boss and tell her what's come up. Talk things over with your dad. And see what he thinks, and then bring your wife to the next therapy session so we can see what she thinks. So he came in the next week and with his wife and a beautiful baby daughter, and he said it was going to be his last therapy session. And I said, well, what did your boss say when you talked to her? He said she told me that when she was my age, she took a year off and she hitchhiked through Europe. And it was the greatest thing for her. And she came back refreshed and with a vision of what she really wanted to do with her life. And she told me to explore this opportunity. And she said they just put me on leave of absence for 2 years. And if it didn't work out, that she told me I could come back automatically and pick up right where I'd left off. And I said, what did your dad tell you? And he said, well, surprisingly, he was excited for me and he was proud. And he said, Mr. Fitzsimmons and his wife loved you as much as your mom and I love you. And they're wonderful, wonderful people. And you're the son that they always wanted and never had. And I would be just so excited for you and proud of you to take this amazing adventure in your life. And then I turned to his wife, and just has this beautiful baby. She's rocking back and forth. And I said, how do you feel about it, Priscilla? Because what he's doing at DuPont, that's guaranteed pretty much. And he's a prodigy. He's one of the top young business minds in America right now. And this was speculative, and he'd be a furniture retailer, and that's comes with promise, but also with risk. What is your thinking? And she said, well, if it means having to sell our old station wagon and buy a new Lexus or a new Ferrari, I think I could live with that. So that was it. And I never saw him again after that day. But it was a wonderful experience. I was just so happy for him. And, Freud said that anxiety and panic are the mysterious emotions. They strike like lightning without rhyme or reason. And as smart as he was or is claimed to be, that's the only thing about anxiety that's never true. It never strikes like lightning without rhyme or reason. And it was not without rhyme or reason in Bill's case. His symptoms of anxiety, his extreme panic attacks and his obsessions and fantasies of losing control and murdering, hanging, or stabbing his baby to death was his body trying to tell him, you have feelings that you're hiding from yourself. And so the first step in what I call the hidden emotion model is to figure out what is it that you're hiding from yourself. And that is not easy to do, I might say. But that's not where the healing comes. The healing comes once you know what it is, you have to make that decision to act on your feelings, to express your feelings, maybe to go in a different direction in your life. And when you do that, that's when the symptoms of anxiety will often, in my case, pretty much always disappear completely. And now this is only one technique out of 30 or 40 or 50 I use for treating anxiety, because everyone has a different path toward enlightenment. But if you've ever struggled with anxiety, and especially if you're a very nice person, let me see if those of you who are still with the video, how many of you have struggled with some anxiety? Put your hands up. Okay. And now how many, keep your hands up. I'll ask you a second question. How many of you with your hands up consider yourselves to be very nice people? Do you see? That's what I mean. All the hands are up. There's a 100% correlation between niceness and anxiety. And this gives us another powerful tool for not only fighting anxiety, but smashing it, making it disappear completely. Now, if you've had that experience, the good news is that you're cured permanently and irreversibly. If you've experienced this hidden emotion thing and you figure out the hidden emotion, your anxiety disappears. Good news, this is a permanent, irreversible cure. But the bad news is your anxiety will come back over and over for the rest of your life. But that's the even better news. Well, why is that the even better news? Because you may never get to the point where you'll know in real time when you're angry, when you're upset, when there's something that you want that you think you're not supposed to want, because this niceness thing seems to me to be kind of a genetic thing, that we have it as a part of our character. But you'll know whenever you get anxious again, that's your body telling you, attend to what's going on in your life right now, because you're mad at someone or you're upset about something. There's something brewing under the surface. And if you think about that and bring it to conscious awareness and do something about it, bingo, the anxiety will disappear again. So that's my story for today. And I love you all and thank you for tuning in.